my left is Noel, to my right is Leslie. Just a reminder that after this round is lunch, so we need to be back in the meeting by 2 p.m. Okay, so without further ado, we become Prime Minister.
Hey, let's be very clear that this debate is about a subset of cities that are economically failing and in a dire economic situation, and it's not just about any cities in general, right? What this therefore means in these cities, we think that the individual and the people and the public's will is to have better economic stability, better economic welfare, and the outcomes that allow them to actualize the so-called democratic outcomes, which means that any objections along so-called principal lines of democracy must be reflected in the consequences weighing up of who provides better alternative. Three things today. First, why these economically failing cities are also the ones that are most likely to have failing bureaucracies and political systems that are far harder to reform in comparison to companies. Second of all, why companies are better in government in terms of incentives, capital, and ability. Third of all, we get better outcomes overall. First of all, 6-point mechanism. One, we're going to have key performance indicators that were regularly updated and chosen by the people. So they want unemployment and also better welfare and also concern for the safety and all that. We put all of them in as key KPIs, key performance indicators. And the companies will get paid every time they reach a certain amount, like lower unemployment to 2%, or ensuring that the welfare and security reaches a certain level, that the crime rate is lower than a certain limit. Second of all, we believe that people will be allowed to vote on and choose these KPIs every few years. That's where we have the process of renewal as well. And when there's a failure to satisfy that particular KPI, there's a series of sanctions. A, it might be that companies don't get money. B, it might be that they actively lose money, because we'll have a third point in our mechanism, by the way, is that there'll be a bond and deposit that companies have to pay, and if they fail to meet the KPIs, they won't get the money back. But what is important here is that there's a range of sanctions being used to nudge and incentivize companies. Fourth of all, we believe that there will be a competitive bidding and tendering process in order to fulfill and show which company better satisfies and meets those KPIs. Fifth of all, we're going to have regular renewal periods of 10 years or 5 years, depending upon how exactly long or short the projects of these companies might take. Cool. Before that, let's be very clear about who these companies would be. We visualize that there are three types of companies that take these deals up, because they might say, oh, no companies will take this up. But we say no. One, companies that prioritize an investment and want to earn cash. We're using risky or potentially, low certainty investment that might bring them huge amounts of profits. These are the companies that might venture in and step in there. But second of all, also very large and stable companies with solid infrastructure and financial infrastructure that allows them to absorb the risk here, but also take them up. But third of all, we think there might be smaller companies that decide to collectivize and group together. We're also okay with that. We think there are groups that will take up this offer. It's not good enough to say this doesn't happen. Yes, Max?
Yeah. Can you tell us the most contentious part of the debate? What rights do these companies have and what rights do they not have?
So, seventh point of the map. We think these companies are subjugated to three types of regulations. One, they will not be allowed to monopolize instead of oligopolies like accountability or regulations. Second of all, they would have to comply with federal and national wage laws and labor rights that are minimum. So there are two types of laws. One is what we call local union and rights laws negotiated by unions in the cities, and the second one is federal laws that are negotiated by the government. We think federal laws tend to set a safety net and a minimum that cannot be trespassed, but we think that local unions tend to lobby for higher wages even still in these economically failing cities. We're not okay with those. We're okay with having a floor. We're not okay with having too high a floor. Thank you for asking that question. First, why exactly do economic failing cities have bad political incentives in both the bureaucrats and also politicians? On a national level, there are two reasons. One, structural changes to the economy. That means that these cities' industries are often left out. See, Detroit and Flint in the US right now, there's a tendency, because of mechanization of labor and shifting away from production industries, for these cities' economies to be fundamentally neglected, right? That's why firms there no longer make a lot of money, and there's a lot of unemployment that happen and result in Detroit, because people are moving out in terms of large productive lucrative businesses, and also there's a downsizing or downscaling of the industries there. Second of all, because of structural lack of lobbying within the political system. Like, these cities don't matter on a grander scheme of things in terms of national politics. Like, they don't have a lot of visibility or ability of that. One, you have substantially more unemployment status quo. Second of all, you have failing infrastructure, bridges, people not being able to access healthcare, hospitals, education systems, and schools. And third of all, we think there's also likely a rise of sociological issues like crimes, like instability, like turbulence, and all that. This is why, when you weigh, Speaker, the impacts of this motion, recognise they have to compare it against a really fucked up status quo. Not good enough for them to say some problems exist with a model. You have to show why a comparative is better. Now, why are companies better than government? Denied. 6 points on that. One, we think, in terms of incentives, companies in general have a performance that's tied to the revenue, right? They earn money based on satisfying all these indicators and also earn money based on the satisfying of certain objectives and lose a heck lot of money when they don't comply with it. That means, yes, they have other business interests and other business objectives, but the way that they always have to ask is, does maximizing my other business interests, like locking out these local businesses, which causes really heavy fines on me, is it worth it? And that's why when they make these trade-offs very often, the balance leans towards actively providing and meeting these KPIs, which is nationally funded in terms of payment. The comparative on your side is that the civil service and politicians both don't give a fuck. Why? Because when it comes to elections every 5 to 10 years, people often vote on a bundle of outcomes, and the electoral system itself is engineered in a way that there are only that many choices people choose from, right? Because for large parties, it's much harder than formulating small companies that can rule and govern local areas well. That is why, on a national level, partisan politics is far less likely to be efficient than companies. Second of all, in terms of pressure, right? Notice on the outside, shareholders, people who have a stake in the amount of money earned by the companies and all that will actively pressure the companies to look at the KPIs and review the performances regularly. On their side, you don't have these incentives because of the union structures and also problems endemic in the bureaucratic and political systems. Third of all, you get more credit rating and trust. Why? This is particularly the case of failing government, where FDI investors or private banks, etc., don't really want to lend to them because they fear their really low credit rating because they tend to default because they tend to not pay back the loans and therefore have a sovereign debt crisis. Comparison, companies might be smaller, we agree with that, but they might also be therefore precisely more accountable and likely to repay the debts and ensure they can take out the money only responsibly because there are far more checks and balances in the private sector to ensure that you don't default in terms of your risk because it also fucks over your other businesses. That means you raise more money overall to fund the infrastructure, fund schools, fund all these things that otherwise would never happen on their side. Finally, Speaker, we think we're at better outcomes. It's not good enough for them to say there might be exploitation. We think it's fair to say that this is happening in South Korea, happening around the world. I'm very proud to propose today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
At some point in the Prime Minister's speech, I realized he was giving a leader of opposition case. So it doesn't sound like companies are leading the governance. It sounds rather there'll be companies there who we're going to make you do certain things and we'll pay you for them. If that's true, and we are mandating companies to do certain things, and we're going to have heavy regulations on monopoly, don't allow them to cut out businesses, they must follow federal laws, there's no governance in their world, there's a strict following mechanism. So I'm going to do a couple of things in my speech. First, talk about their policy, what we think it backfires in terms of what they want to achieve. Second, what we think their policy actually causes more harm in terms of the types of companies you get in governance. Third, talk about what the likely outcomes are, and then I will move into material. First, what do we support on this side of opposition? We support governance by the people. So we're more than happy to increase the elections for these individuals. We are more than happy to cut lobbying by companies within election periods. We're more than happy to increase special economic subsidies for businesses to open up. We're more than how they enact the governance. But if they think they say is this tendering process. Every 10 years once they have a renewed system. Like, don't think I'll say to this, the point at which it becomes quite burdensome. A lot of companies will pull out of your cities, right? They're pulling out world in your world means you have short-term infrastructure because cities are uncertain of the future. And it's in our world, but there's a continuous governance. Federal governments have incentives to make sure cities are constantly long-term because they know the implications affect them as a result of it. In your world, as a result of this tendering process, you're a short-term infrastructure. They'll be less likely to invest in the long run because they know they're not going to hedge their bets in a city that might or might not fail in the future. But the last thing they say is you must follow federal laws and you can't have a monopoly in the status quo. If that's true, you disincentivize actually strong companies from investing within your country. So there are probably really poor companies that won't even pick to begin with, in which case within your governance is smaller, but more bureaucratic and less in the control of people, smaller shareholders that you don't know where they come from. But the second is, if they know they must follow federal laws, you incentivize mass-scale national lobbying. Like in your world, there's an incentive on companies because they directly govern to ensure that federal laws are more looser because they know they have a direct stake because they know how they affect federal laws. So I don't understand when you need 17 points in 3 minutes for your speech to propose a failing policy. Maybe you need to be governed by a company. But the second thing they say is, hang on, the status quo is bad. There's bureaucracy that doesn't care about people. As a result, we need this. Like, I think that's a problem with bureaucracy that needs to be fixed. Not a model to literally 360 this world. I'm more than happy to incentivize politicians to run elections more fairly, or bureaucracies to have KPIs that are tied to the people. I'm uncertain why this cannot exist in our world. But the second thing is they say unemployment is high. It will be higher in your world because companies have incentive to mechanize the fastest, to not ensure welfare of people because they benefit the most from it. A profit-based company that is based on KPIs that they're probably going to set up is a company in which that mechanization will be faster, but people are less going to be compensated. Like the compensation of mechanization by tech companies in like parts of China was limited because they didn't have government regulations to force them to do it. So I think it's insufficient to say there's a problem in the status quo. Your policy makes it worse. But the last thing they say is people vote on large parties. They vote on many different criteria. So obviously it's better for companies because they can pay back their loans. Like two things to say about this. First, companies have an incentive to offshore most money. Like oftentimes it's true. Like companies don't have incentive to declare their profits. Unlike your government, it's heavily regulated. There are many different checks and balances, executive and legislative, which means that money doesn't get lost in translation. In your world, because they know they venture to pay back money if there is a debt, you have an incentive to lose that money in the system. But the second thing I'll say is people vote for different policies. So that's a good thing. Like people have different multifaceted needs. Profit incentive isn't the only necessity. You didn't prove to me why if people care about economic benefits, they would vote in economically savvy politicians. The fact that they didn't vote for a full-on company version of a politician means there are other considerations that need to be taken into account. Before I continue, go for it.
Look, if you have like this imaginary whoopie-doo political capital to get more transparency, regulations, and accountability on your side in elections and all that you put out in your ask, then sure you have equally the same amount of capital, ensure accountability on our side, and also get all the benefits we have. You can't just have the cake and eat it at once.
No, hang on. Look, like in our world, there is a mechanism where politicians are directly accountable because these individuals have less of incentive to hide profits because they run this on election tied to the people. In your world, when the KPIs are going to affect their profit, going to affect the margins that they make, which literally is tied to the function of the company, they have an incentive to skew the KPI against public will than it is for public will. So I think the incentive becomes worse, even if it's the same political capital. In your world, the political capital exercise worse. First, we think there's a principle in this debate. Don't just lie and say people want economic benefits. Obviously, it's true. Our model can take into account economic benefits when you vote economically saving politicians. But people in failing countries like Detroit often have many different needs that are not tied to profit. In fact, we think they're counter. Like in Flint, when there's a lead poisoning in the areas, they vote for environmentally friendly politicians. Or welfare systems are failing, they vote for minority politicians and representation. Or quota system for African Americans. All these things are not profitable. No company takes them up, but governments are more than likely to do this because they run election-based systems. As a result of this, we say in principle, whether or not the city fails or doesn't fail, people have a right to this government that doesn't exist. But the second thing, companies want high production, low cost, maximum efficiency, and a cost is up and the selling price is higher. As a result of this, even if you have anti-monopoly laws, they're more likely to create environments that kick out smaller companies within your country. So you're inevitably going to have a monopoly system that ensures that these companies have higher prices. Oftentimes it's true, they're not catering to the people in your city that are failing their Detroit workers. They cater to the external city. So your city is probably not going to, the workers are probably not going to be able to access the goods within their own city. But the second, labor standards. Like you can't just suggest you can make out labor standards. I would say there's high incentive for collusion within the cities to ensure labor standards are lower. Foxconn, yeah, it took us so long, even with bureaucratic oversight, for us to figure out that there were labor standards that were deteriorating. In your when there's a governance, when they're literally controlling the KPI, People don't have a capacity to say no. At least in our, there are labor units. At least in our, people have the capacity to call them because there's a government that cares about them. In your, when the KPI suggests we should probably have lower standards, there's no capacity for regulation. All these things means that we need a world in which there is a bureaucracy. If that bureaucracy needs fixing, people are in a better position to do it than a company that you're setting KPIs for that can't even govern. I'm uncertain how the world in the proposition looks like.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Ahmed's case or responsiveness was lack thereof. The fact that Brian came up and told you why cities are currently failing was engagement she never dealt with. She just simply said, they'll just be bad. But the question is the comparative. This is the key thing that Brian made very, very clear. The comparative is the fact that bureaucracies are failing because of the way they are structured, because of the norms that pervade them. They often mean that even when there are supposed politicians that are supposed to be beholden to the interests of the people, that yes, you may have city councillors that might be elected, or yes, you might have a mayor. But the reality is they're supposed to take care of an unwieldy bureaucracy that refuses to change, only cares about their iron rights. That's the thing they need to engage with. They need to engage with the fact that you're dealing with a massive, massive city bureaucracy that refuses to change because all they care about is their pay. And that pay is not paid to profits, that pay is not paid to KPIs. They need to deal with that comparative. Until they do, they're not engaging with us. They're just presenting a negative case with no positive contribution to this debate. Let's ask really the first question this debate. How is this distinct and why is we talk? How is this policy distinct from simply status quo, in which companies come into cities and invest anyway and still beholden, for instance, to federal laws and so forth, right? I think personally they're trying to push a massive burden on us by saying, oh, companies basically are now like we create the wild, wild west in which companies can do whatever the heck they want. Right? And I don't think that would be very fair burden. But what we think in this case, the reason why we're saying they govern cities as opposed to govern countries, right, is precisely the fact that we think there's often a subset of laws that are still, yes, so for instance in cities, you still decide, for instance, city laws, like zoning, right? Yeah. Things like, for instance, ensuring the maintenance of city services and so forth. So all these things are still laws and some form of governance, but they're more administrative in nature, right? So of course you're not going to be able to decide things like whether you should be able to pay taxes or not, because it deals with things on the national scale, things like national security and so forth. So you might still be able to decide things like city taxes, how much, for instance, needs to really be paid, for instance, to garbage collectors and so forth. And maybe if you cut down and make it more efficient, you might be able to reduce those taxes, right? So we think in those cases, that's the interest, right? So we think there's a distinction. Moreover, why is this different, right? Apart from the fact they don't get to decide on things like city laws, is the big difference that we have now is that they invest in the system, they invest in the community. There's a distinction here. The easiest illustration that we have is the role of relocating a factory versus outsourcing that we already have in the global economy. When you outsource and you create a contractual relationship, which is often very, very short, the whole idea is you haven't invested long-term into the infrastructure of that society. It means you can pull out whenever you want because you haven't signed a contract, you haven't committed to a long-term relationship. This system now means that you are now invested in the city itself. You literally pump money into it. You're not just caring about your particular office. You care about the entire well-being of the city because the profitability of the city is what ensures the profitability of your country. We think that's big. That's a big deal because you're not just going to say, oh, you know, I've found another city that I prefer, I will now just pull out. Why? Because you're going to do things like lose your profit. So we think in the long term, that's effective. I mean, that's quite different from status quo. Their questions, their entire case, now let's deal with the entire case about how the system will be manipulated, and so we're not going to be able to prevent this huge amount of abuses because somehow companies will always abuse workers, abuse the environment, and so forth. They will simply be lobbying. Firstly, a lot of this stuff simply already occurs under status quo. The whole idea that they'll be going to lobby to change regulations and KPIs, whatever, right? Already occurs under status quo with super PACs. They need to deal with the fact that how they solve these problems, right? The reality is a lot of these cities are failing because you have lobbyists, right? Major, for instance, free trade lobbyists that prevent, for instance, that allow things like Detroit to go under, right? What we do in this case is now if companies are now invested, say, if we have a Tata who decides to run to Detroit and start developing car factories, we now have an alternative lobby. So we think that it's not necessarily wrong in this case, it's not necessarily bad. They need to deal with the alternative. But moreover, they keep saying, for instance, that they won't pay taxes and so forth. The reason why they don't pay taxes is, as I illustrated earlier, because they are seen as temporary tenants, in which they're giving money to a black hole often because the bureaucracy is seen as often inefficient, frustrating the fact that they know they have these stupid health and safety regulations that come to a point where it becomes absurd in places like, for instance, the UK, where companies then go, this is completely inefficient. The frustration then is, of course, you want to avoid taxes because your taxes go into the black hole of bureaucrats who don't do their job, corrupt politicians and corrupt police officials in India, things like that. So you have an incentive not to pay money. Now, if you ensure a cleaner, more efficient form of city governance, you are more invested in paying your taxes because you know that's where it goes. That's why people choose not to pay taxes. That's why companies choose not to pay taxes. We think if you are the one whose officers and whose workers benefit from a well-run city, you will want to contribute to that. We don't think that you have an episode relationship saying to. No, yes, sir.
So when companies invested in Johor, they funded money in the industrial complex, but sucked in money from surrounding populations to sustain their factory. Why wouldn't this happen in your cities as well when there's profit incentive?
Firstly, it's not entirely clear why sucking in populations to work in your factories is firstly inherently wrong. If we're talking about large groups of unemployed individuals, and I'll talk about why it's still good to suck in from other cities anyway, and I'll talk about that by substandard, the whole idea of problems with metropolises in many countries, right? The problem that we then have is it's not necessarily bad if you have this chronic unemployment. Companies aren't going to turn up, many flourishing cities. This is not the debate, right? In which we take employment where employed people are going to start jumping to other cities. Firstly, we don't think it's necessarily bad if it creates more competition. Now companies all have up their game because we have multiple cities that people can move to. So we don't think that choice is necessarily a bad thing. What they need to answer is what the alternative is another set. Let's then ask that question of where this really on the national scale. So Ryan talks about the idea of looking at on the city scale why the cities themselves fail. But why on the national scale this is something that's important? The big problem that we have in many countries around the world is there are a lot of cities with, for instance, deindustrialization and so forth. You have a large number of cities that are left vacant. The reason why they are failing is, for instance, the pulling out of factories and manual labor and so forth, right? So in places like the UK, for instance, there's heavy reliance upon a metropole, right? London in this case, right? And then what that does is most companies will go to somewhere like London because it already has the infrastructure, because they're just there as tenants. They're not interested in the well-being of the city in terms of building up the infrastructure. All they care about, the infrastructure is there, and they will then employ people. This creates a virtuous, in some cases, or vicious cycle, in which then individuals from Newcastle or Sheffield, these dead cities, start moving to London. This creates, obviously, firstly, a few harms to people already living in London that undermine the well-being of an already flourishing city like London, whether run by a government or run by a company, right? Things like rising house prices, things like stresses upon infrastructure, right? You have a growing overpopulation of cities. So you think about places like Manila or Jakarta, for instance. That's significant harms because people keep moving to the metropole because their home city no longer has jobs. Why? Because firms don't want to move there because there aren't offices there. Now, when we have firms investing in or buying into cities, they now have an incentive to move their offices there, create employment opportunity, but moreover, because they are interested in the effectiveness of their offices and being efficient, they will also build the infrastructure. What this means is that individuals who are already concentrated in the metropole start moving back, start spreading out the population across, and we think that's more efficient, firstly, because it means our national economy is less dependent upon one metropole, the same way, for instance, the UK is entirely dependent upon the well-being of London, so anything can potentially shake that strength. But moreover, we think it reduces the stress upon that city. It means that we have a greater number of well-functioning cities for which these are very important goals.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Finally, the second speaker, did we really understand what they were willing to do besides the plethora of defensive prongs that came in the first speaker? So they were more willing to accept that companies will have ability to control laws and zonings. And we would say that that world is one that is more harmful to people on the ground. I have 3 responses to the speaker before I explain how the diversity in these cities will result in more failure on their side. Before that, let's look at truly what's the world that they should be defending. Because that their world should be, there should be a government that should be defending corporations having as much autonomy and control as possible. Because notice that the ability to carry out their policy, as well as all the benefits that come with their policy, require more autonomy of corporations. Why do we say this? Because number one, like corporations literally hate regulation. They understand that regulation is less profitable than is less profitable to them. This means that if they want to convince corporations to enter into their cities, they have to be literally different from the way that they work right now. If you say that it's true that government regulation, like unions or the ability to like not arbitrarily fire people, are things that harm more workers at cheap labor, but also with higher working hours, means that your corporations will directly see an incentive in lowering those labor standards. This was things that were unresponded to, like also the principle that Amrit explained about how governance means that people vote like with different considerations, and this is directly in conflict with the peer considerations that corporations have. Given that corporations are all about profit, and that would see huge losses in their world, we think that this means that the principle is that it directly clashes with the multiple and multifaceted considerations of people on the ground. Meaning that if I have more considerations for the environment, your corporations won't see it as profitable, and therefore directly conflict with my interests. But here's the next thing that comes with in the speaker before me. This idea about bureaucracy. I have 3 levels of analysis under this. The first is that they will also have federal laws, meaning that like their states will still have to deal with all the bureaucracy of federal laws. That's actually a lot worse, because when you don't have micro bureaucracy in your states, which they have no incentive to do because they literally said it's harmful to their cities, it means that they have to deal with all the macro bureaucracies, but also not have the link between them. That transition is more harmful in their side. But secondly, right, this assumes that bureaucracy is purely horrible, right? We can still fix and regulate bureaucracy to become more efficient, but on the comparative, our bureaucracy is a lot more accountable and sensitive to more like things that are less profitable, right? So they would still have a bureaucracy, but only bureaucracy that helps corporations, things that are more business friendly, so things that like allow for faster patent laws, but they would have poor bureaucracy for things like social welfare that actually help people on the ground because it's less profitable on their side. But the last thing we'll say is that they keep on saying that lobbying already exists. Yeah, we're not keeping lobbying either. We think that we essentially want a divorce of money from politics, but this also concedes on the speaker before me that there is a harm of money in politics. We don't know what the government side wants. The next response I have is this idea of investment, right? And I have several responses to this. The first is that this argument that came from the speaker before me assumes this premise that the people in your city are also your customers. But that's not true. If that city was already failing, and these are people with already lower income, and you enter into those cities, you don't see them as customers, you only see them as cheap labor. This means that you won't actually invest in those individuals because you know it's not profitable. Rather, you would make those individuals work, and then you will use all those products in like states outside that are more like higher income, right? We think the second level analysis is that they'll set up factories and they'll suck out money from this, right? So like sure, they want back their deposit, but their have better ability to be more malicious if in order to get back their deposit. There'll be more more policing in those states. That's really helpful for people on the ground, right? The next thing we would say is that people in these cities are seen as replaceable, given the fact that I can control the laws for minimum wages, but I can also control the laws of mechanization. I can also control the laws of getting foreign labor. If they do not allow this ability to change these policies and mechanize, it means that it's less profitable on their side. We don't think companies will take that, right? The next thing we will say is that taxes. Okay, so you would still give taxes to the federal government. I don't know what that is, but also the ability for corporations to control taxes is more harmful in the conflict of interest compared to a government controlling taxes, right? A government controlling taxes means that you can, or politicians controlling taxes means that you can vote in or vote out politicians. You wouldn't have that ability. Sure.
So local citizens care about welfare, employment, jobs, and a stable life. Could you explain finally how on your side companies are ever able to lobby these people to give up their jobs, give up these important KPIs, define the revenue streams for these companies on our side, but not on yours?
You own the city, and as well as all the businesses in those cities. If you own the jobs of these people, you are more likely to coerce these individuals to vote in favor of your corporations. They'll always be tied to the fact that they cannot move out of these cities, and they'll always be tied to the employment of these corporations. We think it's harmful on their side. People in rural areas are more coerced into lower income jobs because literally the government is the only option for them, is that government is a corporation. We think that diversity is one that fails on their side. So it's integrated into all my responses. We think that essentially, there is one that will have this corporation entering into it, flooding the city with tech, for example, Apple, flooding the city with tech-based industries. But the moment that tech-based industry fails, everyone in that city also fails. The diversity of options for these consumers also starts to diminish as a result of this corporation entering into these cities and monopolizing it, right? They can deregulate as much as they want. First of all, corporations won't enter in their world, but secondly, they'll eventually find more subversive and malicious ways to monopolize and harm individuals on the ground because it's more profitable.
Thank you very much. Can we have the government with?
Mr. Speaker, I think what's important here is that there's an implicit question in this debate that opposition wants to run away from. Do they want safe failing cities, and how will they do it? At no point have they ever substantiated what the position is on these economically failing cities, what the proposal is substantiated, beyond simply an assertion that better governance. We haven't heard any analysis at all about how that will change the current dynamics within these systems. Brian was very vivid in his explanation as to why current systems don't work, especially because of the negative incentives that exist within civil service. I'll answer two questions in today's debate. One is, what do companies really care about? And secondly, how are the people in a nation affected? I think the first question is most important because a lot of opposition's case is premised on this idea that corporations care simply about profit without really caring about things like shareholders and stakeholders and reputations. I think it's a very simplistic and really a single line kind of attack that they have there. But let's first, to answer this first question here, what do companies care about? And we believe, I think we're being quite Adam Smith about this. We think that even if corporations have self-interest, we think that so long as people benefit from their self-interest, we're absolutely okay with that. We showed you very early on that civil service, for example, administration in these areas, and then these non-elected officials, they're very bad incentives, also including elected officials. One is as an aversion towards risk. If you do something a lot of promotions in these city councils are based on your ability to avoid being seen to be associated with something that is bad, rising crime and things like that. But also you run a program that is failed, that means your actual promotion are affected. I mean, obviously, if they wanted to change that, maybe they could have counterclocked that very early on, but they didn't. Secondly, they said, well, the second is you can't fire people because there are civil service unions that make it impossible for you to impose KPIs. Thirdly is nepotism, which actually creates the same kind of problems they have. They talk about law lobbying super PACs. We think that that we are at worst no worse than status quo. We are no worse than they are at the very worst, even if we accept the worst accusations upon us. What did they say? They say, well, companies hate regulations, and we think that's absolutely ridiculous. Heavily regulated industries still have companies coming in and making shitloads of money because of the fact that they recognize that there's profit to be made there. So we would argue that even if you have massive regulations, like the simplest example is big pharma. Despite the huge amounts of regulations that exist to the FDA and so many corporations, like corporations coming because they recognize the profit to be made. So that argument that regulations will disincentivize companies away from coming in is absolutely absurd, right? So, okay, so what else did we say? We said, so I think what companies care about, I think this is something that's very important, this is something that's come up very early on, is like, why we said the profit incentive works, that companies prioritize increasing value, not only for their shareholders, but only their stakeholders. That's why they care more, while they care about things like cash flow and profits and things like that, they also care about things like their PR and reputation. Goodwill functions a lot in terms of what companies care about, and anything that affects them will be harmed. So what they want you to believe is this idea that if corporations coerce, if they lower labor standards to the point where people are being used and exploited, do you honestly think corporations would be okay with that? That kind of news being seen to be exploitative. Obviously that affects their ability to get that contract renewed. One, two, it tracks the ability to run other cities. So obviously it's absolutely ludicrous for them to expect that corporations don't care at all about their reputation. I think that's a huge incentive for them to do that. All right, so what did they say? They said they will manipulate through lobbies, to super PACs. I'm sorry, that's actually very apparent within the current status quo of having lobbies. All right, sure, let's ask. Sure.
So, in a world in which there was no money in politics as we propose, would you think it's easier to micromanage individuals than it is with a company that's bureaucratic but in favor of profit?
So you obviously want to live in a fantasy world where money doesn't matter in politics. Obviously that's not the debate that we're talking about today. Where money does matter in politics, where there's huge amounts of lobbying. So that is the world you live in, that is the world you have to defend. And they still haven't come up with a counterpart as to how they will save failing cities, or whether they even want to save them at all. Maybe Matt can finally tell us what their position is on that. So at best, we show you how companies care about more than simply profit, but also about shareholders, stakeholders, and also about their reputation. And therefore, a lot of the problems they have is mitigated by the impacts that companies have, is a disincentive for bad behavior in the future. Secondly, how are people and the nation affected? So let's do very good with the arguments that came from opposition. They say, let's run it as best, right? Residents will be seen as labor, like they will be exploited, you'll have all these kind of regulations, but even if you have minimum standards, they'll find some way to exploit it. Now, obviously, that's rebutted very early on by my argument about reputation. But here's the thing, right? The thing about labor is that corporations see them as assets. It's not necessarily seen why you would want to diminish your assets. So even if we accept them at their worst, even if we accept the idea that residents will be seen as cheap labor to be exploited, there's no reason for corporations to not want to maximize the assets that they already have. And I think that's absolutely wonderful, right? Corporations today, I think they're ignoring the trend today where corporations recognize that the more you invest in your assets, the more you invest in your workers, things like continuing education, by increasing the opportunities, you make it more possible to get money. So therefore, you have two scenarios here. Do you think that companies will be willing to waste away the residents and exploit them and make them worse off and worse off for their balance sheet, or do you think they're more likely to invest in them and make them better individuals, better able to become entrepreneurs of their own and create their own businesses? We think that obviously this scenario is far more likely. Okay, so I think what's also ridiculous is the idea that residents will be coerced. The answer to that is simple. Why can't they just move away? What is it in their proposal that says that these people have to stay there? They're chained to wherever they stay. And that's exactly why Rebecca's argument about metropolises and reversing the trend is so important. Nowadays, when people are actually free to move away, cities have to compete more and more with doing that. So the exclusive benefit that we have compared to that where civil service works is that companies are better able to attract investment. This is present in Brian's argument as well, because there's more trust in companies for their ability to run things. I think it's a generally tried rule that people trust companies to run things more than governments can. And I think that's very important. This is why, for example, malls, invite anchor tenants in, because they create the kind of infrastructure and actually create the kind of attraction that people have towards creating a market for that very area. Examples of where this is happening, of course, Palo Alto, where you have a collection of companies that actually attract all kinds of investment in that area. You've got Microsoft being associated with Redmond, right? You've got the rising tech hub of Austin, Texas.
These are all examples of where companies move to where there's a cluster of other companies and increase employment for everyone. They need to tell us why increasing employment, like even if they're going to be employed in labor, is absolutely wrong. So to answer that last question, how are people in the nation affected? Very positively for part of the votes.
Okay, I get it. I'll be very quick. I'll run. Literally.
What's that?
Next.
It's yours, man. It's okay.
I guess you could say it's very fair. I guess it's a watered down. I'm lost.
I think at this point, it's important for me to establish the negative cases are an acceptable op case. The second thing to say is that this whole context about cities failing, where do we place it? Because this must be clarified first. The fact that city is failing is not and should not be a defense for a very bad policy. If in this debate, the op gets to show you that in a world where you get jobs, but your lives are far worse, we win this debate. Let me catch your breath. But the next thing you like to say is, we think this debate cannot operate because a lot of their argument seems like a pseudo special economic zone argument or case. That's not the debate. The case allows you to run cities that govern, means that they have some authority. Allowing people to have special economic zones means that you're allowed to set up shops, not run cities. I think there's a clear difference, and I'll show you these differences throughout my speeches. There are only three issues. First of all, the biggest one is who serves the general public better. I'll deal with this last. The second thing is, will companies enter, or will they enter at all? And thirdly, is this a good? Take a PR.
So my speech gave you lots of reasons why the alternative of reform, better governance, better bureaucracy probably is true without all the reasons I gave to explain why it's not feasible. So would you care to engage with any of the reasons I gave you to show why your counterplot belongs to La La Land and another day to some?
If your PI says that, I would engage your case, the answer is yes. But let me move on to the more contentious issue, to the least contentious issue. Will companies enter today's debate? And let's look at their model. In a model, Brian, you're supposed to explain how the selection process should happen. The second part of the model should explain how companies are able to run and what rights and rights they do not have. And secondly, in the event they do screw up, your model needs to explain what happens to them. But their model didn't. And their model instead told us about KPI. Somehow, this KPI is decided by the individual, meaning to say there's a room for it to be an unrealistic and arbitrary standard decided by people who have no authority on politics. They get to decide. What makes you think that companies would agree to enter into such? an unrealistic KPI. You will lose, right? That means that any meaningful infrastructure that you have, you will be just kicked out of office. What makes you think that this KPI was something that companies agreed to? But the second thing they also said was that this whole issue about 10 years. All right, the issue with 10 years, and I'll specifically deal with the term later, it means that you sacrifice the ability for companies to actually affect meaningful change. What makes you think that these companies will not just leave, right? Like for companies, I think there's enough room. If I have a company and this is a narrow window that allows me to squeeze money as much as possible, because there are companies who work on such narrow windows, investment firms, and do those companies just squeeze out all your profits and leave away, you don't allow accountability to those companies as well. Then move on to the next issue, right? What type of companies will enter? In Brian's speech, he said that investment firm. I think investment firms will not enter because they are generally they don't closely link themselves to operation, right? But even if they enter, I think they're more likely going to leave after a short period of time to just get the money. I think according to that analysis, then the more persuasive one is the one that Op told you. More likely, these are going to be production companies who want to have control or authority to ensure that their production services run at a lower cost. And therefore, we are able to tell you that the types of companies that are entering are more likely going to be predatory and come at the expense of people on the ground. But here's one issue that no one explains. What happens to the wealth of money this company makes? They take home with them to their own land. In our world, there will be better cycle for infrastructure. Even though it will be a bad government, the money goes back to the people and will trickle back to the people. So at the very least, we told you that our stakeholders are less predatory. So move on. Moving on to the second issue is who serves the public better. Now, the first issue is the issue of 10 years. I do think this is a short term. This means that companies are not encouraged to build long-lasting infrastructure. What is the difference here? The difference here is that they will often build self-serving industry, or very often they are already mechanized and labor to just come in to set up shop, to make money, and leave. But the reason for this is that it is bad because very often they know they are going to be outbid. There is no certainty that they will remain in office because they know that the 10 years means that it's a short window and there's no guarantee for me to win office. Therefore, I might just be mobile and be ready to leave whenever I need to leave or whenever I'm outbid, right? That's why Rebecca's claim about protecting your investment doesn't hold any value because there is no certainty. In contrast to a politician, his success in office and ability to serve the public will be the determinant here. Your KPI will not be the determinant here because an outbidder would mean that a good company that has served your city for 10 years will get to leave. What does this mean? This means that politicians are able to respond to vulnerable communities a lot better than your communities. Like your communities, and the reason for this is that, like, I think no part of their speech they were able to explain why they will be able to engage vulnerable communities. And I think there was a lot of analysis from Bob to explain why these things are costly and not within the interest of companies. Yeah. But secondly, we told you, if the influence of lobbying is damaging, I think you make it far worse. In our world, we told you that money tarnishes politics, and money limits the way in which people engage with people's interests. But you are giving the company not only money, but absolute authority. But the next thing is that we told you is that the reason why people are generally going to be treated shittier is because when they will get jobs, their labor standards will be worse. I'm not talking about slaves here, right? Let's get the dictionaries. But they get to control things like working hours, contracts, employment, the type of migrants that they get to bring in. And because these are areas in which they can cut costs and make money, as a result, your individual are more likely going to suffer from far shittier lives than they already have. Political incentive might be bad, but they are a lot more corrective than yours. In our world, a bad politician can be replaced. In your world, there's no guarantee that a bad company will be replaced better. But on top of that, I think Felice and Amri gave you a lot of arguments as to why corporate incentive is a lot more disgusting than political incentive. The fact that they're cutting corners means that there's legitimate opportunity for them to do so and just get away. And this whole issue about unemployment, I think if there's a room to make money, companies will enter. That's an argument for companies to enter, not to govern the entire city. I think very often governments are able to create special economic zones and can do a lot of things. I don't think you need to trade off the lives and liberties of individuals for a lot of these things. And then they say you have PR. You are a local government. You have been given the mandate to regulate. And I think this government bench allows the magic of PR and be hopeful that companies like Apple won't abuse the labor standards and ask children to overwork and work in horrible conditions. Because PR didn't work then and will not work now. In an opposition world, there's a certainty that the lives of this individual will be far better. We beg you to oppose.
Yes, pretty good.
In the pursuit of trying to stamp out the evil of corporations, they replicated the bureaucracies they so desperately hated. Because if you look at their model, they say companies must have autonomy to build more factories, to invest in communities. But if you invest too much, you have an anti-monopoly law. But if you want to increase your efficiency, co-production, make sure that communities have high amounts of labor, no, you can't have labor standards. Like, I don't understand at what point are they different than the status quo that already limits companies. But according to DPM, you can create zoning laws, you can create some regulation on services, to which we say our harms apply. You can't just model it out in your 17-pronged model. So I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to compare what a governance for a city looks like compared to a bureaucracy if you say there are problems with it. Second, we'll talk about profit incentive and what it does. First, this KPI, because according to them, and we finally have response in third grade, if it's so coercive, just leave. If you leave, then you have the same problem as your second speaker so gladly pointed out. People move to urban areas, they don't want to invest in these failing cities, at which point there's no benefit. But the second thing I will say is, if people can leave, a lot of people don't know they're being coerced. High manipulation by companies suggest we own your jobs, we know what's best, here's a KPI that will probably work out, people are going to vote for them anyway. So you can't come out of this fact that the KPIs are probably going to be more lenient than a government. A government is probably bureaucratic, that has 3 levels of checks and balances to ensure there's a link. There's a link between maybe being environmentally friendly, maybe having quotas. These things means that on a net, you can have KPIs and you can show that companies maybe have to fulfill them, but they are more lax than ours. So I don't think you're going to run away from them. But the second thing they say, aha, we have nepotism and lobbying ours. To which we say, I don't like lobbying. You know how many times I have to say in my speech, we're against lobbying. I don't know why that's part of the debate. But if you want to push that on us, we have lobbying sometimes in politics. Yours is a lobby running the government. It is the worst version of it. Like literally, you say we have a problem with it. You put the people who are backhanding politicians, doing all the jobs, only make it worse. But the last thing they suggested was, hang on, there's nepotism. Oh God. There's nepotism in our work, but it's linked to at least some form of election process. There's links to people. In your work, it is a shareholder. I don't know who the hell these shareholders are, what their incentives are, when they're going to pull up. That's nepotism. You can't regulate. All this means, if you want to do a comparison on shit happening, your shit is worse. Second, the profit incentive. Because according to them, profit incentive means you invest in communities. Maybe you'll maximize assets because you don't want your labor to die. Like, two things to say about this. First, you'll invest in so far as it benefits same areas. Like this sucking in, not people, sucking in investment from rural areas. Like in Johor, it happened as a POI. No response there. This means other communities, even if you have anti-monopoly laws, other communities who have unfavorable zoning regulations, other industries are likely to die out because they need the industry to die in order for it to have sustainable profit. But the second thing we say is, why would they want to have more labor laws? They make more money from just churning labor. Once they use up this labor, they can have more individuals who are just dying to get more jobs in those areas. Like in purpose of destroyed, I'm sure they have limitless supply of labor. All they will mechanize faster because there's less regulation or mechanization. But they say, hang on, companies will enter because heavily regulated industry and big pharma have huge companies. Big pharma is the least regulated of everything. They really low patent protection. Oftentimes it's true that big pharma manipulates patent protection to provide themselves. You would have all those things worse. As a result of this, we think the profit incentive leads to more harm than it does good. But the second thing they said was that as a premise was reputation. I don't know what world you live in where reputation means anything. Like in a world in which you control a city, reputation is the type of the way you present yourself. You can manipulate the narrative within a city. You can decide what is profitable, what isn't. But governments can't control it anyway. To which we say, if there's a city that's failing, we have special economic zones. Governments can have links to other cities. You're more happy of investment and preferential loans for individuals to opt in. All those things can be done without the governance that you say individuals must be. Even if our cities fail, there's something that's debate around unengaged, the principle. If it's true that people have different prioritization, they care about the colonies, but they care about the environment in linked, where there's literally net policy in the area of minority quotas, people will make those decisions. And if people don't make those decisions and you put them in those cities, they will lead to an inefficient cities. And at that point, we'll have nepotism that cannot be mitigated. Your cities, your KPIs that won't fail. I think that world is worse.
Thank you. We have a long reply.
Mr. Speaker, I wish I could respond respond to Ahmed's speech. Unfortunately, I'm giving a reply, so unfortunately, sometimes the violence speeches and violence speeches. The one thing she did say is we never responded to the principle of democracy and so forth. What we did, firstly, that's in Ahmed, so to look back at it, right? But I have a more fundamental question. There's a term used in Singapore. Principle can eat apart. But the problem is you can't. When you're dealing with failing cities in which people have no jobs, in which people are suffering from going to metropoles, in which put more stress upon metropoles themselves and worsen infrastructure, you can't eat your principle of democracy. The only positive contribution they have in this debate is this idea of democracy. They needed to show how they further it in the scenario of failing democracies. Because as we pointed out, democracy is to ensure that people have a better standard of life, that people have the ability to decide how they can have a happy life, what they want to do to achieve that. They're not allowing that. They're just simply saying, oh, we've got failing cities, so we'll hold on to principle of democracy and we'll continue giving power to unelected bureaucrats who are not doing their job properly. 3 questions to say. Firstly, what causes failing cities? Secondly, how do we fix the system? Does this worsen the situation? Last one. Firstly, what exactly causes failing cities? We think we came up very clearly from PM, and we brought this down the line, of the characterization of what the harm is. The harm is not lobbies at this stage. The harm is often your cities failing because there's not been long planning, for instance, in terms of economic policies and so forth. But why has that not occurred? Is it because companies themselves want cities to fail? Ford wanted Detroit to shut down? No. Right? A lot of the time, it was bad planning by bureaucrats. Why? Because of the structural bureaucracy, the way bureaucracies run, city bureaucracies, it permeates it and goes through generations. Why? Because, for instance, promotion based on seniority, very obvious one. If anybody's worked with bureaucracy, you all know that the top people aren't necessarily the smartest, the best. They get there because they stuck it out the longest. I know I spoke. What that means is that you will never do anything to risk your promotion that is likely to come if you just sit it out and don't promote. That happens in bureaucracies all the time, right? And as a result, even when there is economic and people are dying or people are starving and people are leaving a city, you'd rather not, for instance, do things like say, yes, we will, for instance, clip the wings of local unions in order to attract investment. Because why? Because the alternative might be, but we've always done it this way. Because of the nature of bureaucracies with seniority always means that you always go back to, we've always done it this way. Their only response, and they never properly respond to this, we don't like it as well, so we'll reform bureaucracies. The problem is endemic within the system. How do you reform bureaucracies when bureaucracies themselves only care about their own sustenance? There's no time to be how they resolve that problem, because if that's the root cause, and they've never contested what the alternative root cause is, if that's the root cause of the problem, they're not solving it either. Secondly, how then do we solve the system? And so that's why we say we change the entire form of governance. The way we do this is firstly, bring in companies. We recognize that profit making, yes, has its bad side, but ultimately has its good side. It means that we have more efficiency. It means that where you might have corrupt government officials, inefficient government officials can't be bothered to do that to ensure the well-being of the city and growth of the city. It means that now you have a company that's interested in the growth, because companies do care about profits. Companies do care about making money and continue to grow their investment. That is ultimately a good thing. What's important in this case is this: there is an overlap with administration and government. There's an overlap business as well. We think that ultimately is a good thing. Because why? Companies often don't want to feel invested, and this is my analysis that came up, never dealt with. Companies don't want to feel invested in cities because all they are, oh, I'll just move as and when it suits me. Moreover, in this case, they've committed to a contract for 10 years. They're not going to jump and leave the deposit behind, right? If they do, another company will step in and use their infrastructure or they've done in a short period of time. So they're not that interested in doing that. Moreover, we think at this ultimately, so firstly, they've already committed themselves to it. This system requires that. Moreover, what we also have is now we have an overlap. They're able to cut back the effective administration. Their only response was this worsens harms. Our problem is that we pointed this out. This doesn't still deal with the problem of engaging with the fact that we have failing cities. They've never dealt with the idea that profit making can be done in good things. They've simply said it only brings harms.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.